everybody, it's Mel. Thank you so much for joining me today for April's reading wrap-up. So as you may be aware, during the month of April is the Magical Reads Aurelium Academy Readathon. This readathon is an amazing role-playing game readathon that to me feels very much like I am playing Dungeons and Dragons by reading books. It is created by G from Book Roast. I will link her channel in the description below. If you're not already subscribed, I highly recommend that you go and do so. I love this readathon. I find it really fun, and I am really enjoying my character, whose name is Illyria. So you create characters, you go on this magical quest to join the Aurelium Academy. Once you're in the Aurelium Academy, you pick a career that you would like to become adept at, and that is the general idea. So my character is working towards becoming a Master of Elements, or a Master of Elements. So this semester I needed to do certain subjects in order to be able to move into this semester in August, when I'll need to get certain grades in those subjects, which means I needed to read books that had particular prompts. I will put my TBR video for Magical Reads for April down in the description below as well, so you can go and check out what I should have read. But I'll just quickly run through that now. It didn't go quite according to plan, so I'm going to have to do a little bit of catch up before I am able to move into August to furthering my career and getting those grades. So I'll do that over the next few months between now and August. But as far as the year-long quest that G has also put up for us to be able to do if we want to, it means I am staying at the Aurelium Academy because I need to further my studies. But anyway, so I needed to study animal studies, and for this particular semester the subject was heads and tails. So I needed to flip a coin. If I got heads, I had to read non-fiction. If I got tails, I had to read a fiction book. Initially I chose The Once and Future Witches by Alex E. Harrow, but I didn't end up reading that. However, I did read an arc from Netgalley, which was Cuckoo in the Nest, so I decided to count that as fiction instead because it was fiction. Then I was studying astronomy, and the subject focus for that was the eclipse effect, which I needed to read a book with 2 letter E's in the title. So I selected Before the Coffee Gets Cold for that, and I did read that one. Then I was also doing conjuration. The subject focus for that was spirit binding spells, and I needed to read a book recommended by a friend. So I ended up going with Murder on the Links by Agatha Christie. Agatha Christie in general has been recommended to me by any number of people, so I decided to go with that and kind of get around it that way. I did read that. Then I also studied Elemental Studies, and the focus was botanical controls, and I needed to read a book with flowers on the cover. I didn't quite manage to get this one. I had chosen The Last Tale of the Flower Bride by Roshni Chokshi, but I didn't get to it. So I'll have to read a book with flowers on the cover between now and August. And then the final subject is shapeshifting, and for that I was studying form of the wolf. So I needed to read a book with a wolf on the cover, title, or in the author's name, and I didn't get to this one either. I was supposed to read The Fifth Elephant by Terry Pratchett, which has wolves on the cover, but didn't manage it. So that's Magical Reads. But like I said, G has very kindly said that you can kind of continue with it throughout the year. You just need to pass all those things before you can move into the next semester, and that's when you get your grades. So it's a work in progress. Anyway, let's talk about the books I actually did read in the month of April. April was a pretty slow reading month for me in terms of finishing books, and partly that is because I am buddy reading A Day of Fallen Night by Samantha Shannon with my friend Alison, and we are not going to be finishing that within a particular month. We started it in May, but we won't be finishing until we finish it, basically. We're reading roughly 100 books a week, 100 pages even a week, and so it's just not getting done. But I was still putting time and effort into reading that, which I'm really enjoying, so that works out well. And then I was also supposed to be buddy reading again Rachel by Marian Keyes with my friend Rachel, but there's some topics in there that is a little bit tricky for both of us, so we both decided that it would probably be best for the moment not to continue with it, but we will pick it up again at some point. But it was a book that I read some of but that I didn't then finish, so that's another reason why that happened. And then I'm also reading the Iliad with my friend Max and with Paige from Pages with Paige. And it's a book that's going to take longer than I expected. We were supposed to read that in April. I ended up starting it midway through April because I thought it would fit in for Eurovisionathon, which goes from the middle of April to the middle of May, but I didn't manage to finish it in April. I'm listening to it on audio, which is part of the reason why I don't read audio as quickly as I read physical books. But yeah, so that's kind of why that happened. But I still did read and I still did enjoy most of the things that I read, so I'm pretty happy with where things are going, even if my finishing books situation means that I'm a little bit light on how much I can talk to you about today, and also means that my yearly goal for Goodreads I'm a little bit behind on, but I'll catch up. I'm not too concerned. So, to the books that I did actually read. The first book that I started and finished in the month of April was Cuckoo in the Nest by Fran Hill. This is an arc that I got through Netgalley. I'm not 100% sure when it comes out, but Editing Mel will have that job of figuring that out. But yeah, anyway, I did enjoy it. I gave it an 8.34 in Corpile, which works out to be 4.5 stars. So a pretty high rating, just not quite getting to 5 stars. So this is a young adult contemporary, and we follow the main character whose name I have entirely forgotten. But anyway, I think she's like maybe 14 or something like that. Roughly 6 months ago, or maybe a year ago, her mother died, and her father had always had a little bit of an issue with alcohol. But since her mother died, he has been basically incapable of caring for himself or for his daughter. The daughter has picked up a lot of the parental responsibilities, like looking after herself, but also looking after her father quite a bit. The school that she goes to are aware that things aren't going super well, and they hear about a few things at the beginning of the story that really do quite concern them, and so they end up talking to child protection or something like that. It's set in the UK. I'm not sure what the service would be called in the UK, but something like that. And she ends up getting it taken from her father and put in with this family who also have a daughter her age. And yeah, it's about her experiences with that and her experiences moving in with this new family. So the title is Cuckoo in the Nest, and it's sort of alluding to the fact that cuckoos lay their eggs in other nests, and when the baby cuckoo hatches, they then prey on and kill the other young of the other birds in the nest that they're in. It's a little bit of a different twist than that, because the young girl who's the main character, whose name I've 100% forgotten, she is not a bad cuckoo, but her presence in the house causes quite a few difficulties for the young girl, the child of the family, just around sort of jealousy and not knowing her place and feeling confronted by this situation and confused about what her role now is. And the daughter is quite a sort of rebellious character, and this new girl is a kind of more of a good little girl, and so yeah, there's a lot of friction there. And that, coupled with just the fact of there being an extra person in the house who has higher needs, who is trying to fit in, it does mean that there are a lot of family secrets that are kind of exposed, and it causes a lot of issues within the family and quite a lot of blow-ups. There's also a lot of stuff going on with the girl's father, and how he is behaving and what her situation will be. This family situation for her is supposed to be only temporary, but due to circumstances that happen while she's there, it may end up being longer term. And yeah, it's looking at all of the various different tensions and problems and difficulties that you would have from that situation. I found it quite moving. I found it really, really compelling and really, really interesting, and I did enjoy the writing style. I thought it was very well written. I really liked the characters. I mean, when I say I really liked the characters, I liked the way the characters were done. Didn't necessarily love the characters themselves, but I did like the way they were written. They felt very real and very believable, very fleshed out. It was in the first person of the young girl, the main character, who's, I keep saying whose name I've forgotten, which I have forgotten. Let me just see if I can figure that out. Jackie, that's her name. So it's set in 1976 and Jackie ends up moving in with the foster family, the Walls. So what I did write, among other things, is that throughout the book there is a real sense of uncertainty, a sense that something is not quite as it seems and things are about to erupt, which happens, and secrets are revealed and the family's cohesion is shaken. I did think that was very well done, but I did find it a little bit misleading because, like I said, the title of the book is Cuckoo in the Nest, and because that fact about cuckoos, I was expecting the danger to come from the foster girl, and so I was always a bit uneasy, but I wasn't quite sure what was coming and what she was going to do, which again I thought was really well done, and the fact that it was misleading may very well have been on purpose. I just found it a little bit confusing, and that's the main reason why I dropped the 0.5 rather than giving it a full 5 stars. But also the ending was really quite abrupt and there was no real conclusion of everything that happened. I don't mind an ambiguous ending, and sometimes I prefer one just because otherwise it feels far too neat. But in this particular instance, there wasn't enough of the different story strings being tied up, which I would have preferred a bit more. And also, like I said, because it was so abrupt, yeah, it just felt like I was shortchanged a little bit. So that's the reason why it's only 4.5 as opposed to 5 stars. I say only, but 4.5 is definitely an excellent rating for me. But yeah, I highly recommend it. Like I said, I will put on the screen when it comes out. It may already have come out, I'm not 100% sure, but I did really enjoy it and I do highly recommend it. So that was Cuckoo in the Nest by Fran Hill. The next book that I want to talk to you about today is Before the Coffee Gets Cold by Toshikazu Kawaguchi. This is a very small, very cute, very sweet little book. So it's actually 3 different stories that are intertwined by where they take place. So in Tokyo, there is a little basement cafe in a little alleyway that is a place where people can time travel. There are very specific rules around the time travel. One of the rules is that you have to return before your coffee gets cold. I'm not going to tell you what the other rules are because I don't want to do any spoilers, but yeah, so there are 3 different stories that take place around this concept of going back in time or time traveling before the coffee gets cold. So you have to come to the cafe, obviously, and you have to be given a cup of coffee, and you have to return before the coffee gets cold. So it's 3 different people for 3 different reasons wanting to time travel. I found it, like I said, really sweet and really cute. To be perfectly honest though, it's, like I said, a very short little book. It's 213 pages long. It took me a little while to get into. I found the author's writing style a little bit off-putting at first. I'm not sure specifically what it was about the writing style, but it was just I found it very odd, and I found it a little bit hard to kind of really get into, and so it took me probably half of the first story to really get used to the writing style and be able to find it fun and interesting. So that's a little bit of a mark against it for me. But once I was into it, I did really, really enjoy it, and I did find it really interesting, and I thought it was really, really sweet. My favourite was definitely the final story, but I thought they were all quite interesting and quite well done. I did really enjoy the rules around the time travel and the way that the time travel was structured. I found that really, really quirky and really fun. I definitely understand why people absolutely love this book. I definitely like I said, did enjoy it. I do really want to read the other books in the series, but yeah, it just wasn't quite 100% as fantastic as I'd heard. I think also it may have been let down a little bit by the fact that, yeah, it's so hyped and so popular and people love it so much. So I was expecting to absolutely adore it. And like I said, I did end up really enjoying it, but I think because it took me a little while to get into it, I found that it was just not living up to that hype, and so it was a little bit of a letdown for me for that. I don't really have a lot else to say about it. I don't want to go too much into what the stories were about because it's only a very short book. Yeah, I don't want to give too much away, so I'm not going to say any more than that, other than to let you know that I gave this a 7 in Core Pile, which works out at 4 stars. Next up we have Murder on the Links by Agatha Christie. I read this one via audio, and I read it on my way to and from another part of Tasmania, visiting friends, so in the car driving. This is a Perrault story and it takes place in France, so it works for Eurovision-a-thon. This one follows Hercule Poirot, who has been asked by a member of the aristocracy to come to his home in somewhere in southern France and help him with a problem that he's having. So Poirot heads off to do that, and he's accompanied by his friend Hastings. The book is actually from Hastings' perspective, but it's talking about this mystery, this murder mystery that happens when they go to where they are headed, and someone has been killed. Their body was found on a golf course, which is, I'm not certain if it was part of this estate or just beside it. I'm pretty sure it was part of the estate. And so Poirot, with the help of the local detective and also the local magistrate and also Hastings, are all trying to figure out what happened and who committed the murder. The local magistrate is kind of on the fence about Poirot, but the local detective very much thinks that Poirot doesn't know what he's doing, is infamous, but not really for a good reason, and so he's very unhappy about having Poirot working alongside him and very much doesn't want to agree with Poirot at all or take anything that he says to heart or to account, and so there's a bit of tension there. Yeah. So I'm not going to go into any more details than that. It is not a super long book itself. Most Agatha Christie's aren't super long. I really enjoyed this one. I always really enjoy Agatha Christie's books. They're not favourite books of mine at all, but I do really enjoy them. I think that Agatha Christie has a really fun, really easy to read writing style, really easy to listen to, and I really enjoy whenever I do listen to them. Like I said, it's never really sort of amazing and never blows me away, but I don't usually ever guess the villains or anything like that, and it's always tied up in a nice little bow, so you end up coming away feeling like you just had a good time, and you know, you got a good story told to you, basically. On Core Pile, I gave this one 6.43, and that works out to be 3.5 stars. So yeah, that's kind of all I have to say about that. The next book is another arc that I read, The Warden by Daniel M. Ford. This is actually the first book in a series. I'm not sure how many books there are going to be in the series. As I said, it's an arc that I read. I read it on Netgalley. I believe that this one was published on the 30th of April, so it definitely should be out now, and I would highly recommend that you go and check this one out. It is a fantasy. A few of the different reviewers were calling it a cozy fantasy, and I can definitely see why, although I do think that there was a little bit more at stake than maybe some of the kind of cozy fantasies that I've heard talk about, like Legends and Lattes. It's definitely higher stakes, but I still can understand why it was being called a cozy fantasy. So in Core Pile, I gave this one 7.43, which is a 4-star rating. Like I said, I did really enjoy it. So we are following a woman who is probably in her, I think, very late teens, very early 20s, called Alice. Alice comes from quite a respected aristocratic family. She is quite rich, and she has gone to a kind of magic school in her world called the Lyceum, and she has learnt how to be a mage. There are a variety of different I guess, careers that you can take as a mage and different types of magic that you can do. She has graduated from 3, but her main magic, her main school is necromancy, and she has become a warden. Now, wardens are sent to various different parts of the country in order to help the local area in whatever they need helping in, but the idea is more than just they fix fences or whatever. They are helping with magical issues, helping with if there's a problem with the dead being undead and, you know, causing havoc, or those sorts of things, so magical needs. And a small town on the very edge of this country, out at the border, have asked to have a warden. So Alice is sent to this small town, but they haven't had a warden for quite a long time, and so her tower that is set aside as her home is in really bad disrepair. And even though they asked to have a warden, no one in the town really trusts the magic, no one really trusts her, they're all a little bit afraid of her, they don't really want one there, even though they have felt that they need one enough to ask for one. So she has a little bit of a difficult, rocky start. She is also, having come from the city, I think the capital city of this world, or of this country in the world, and being from a very well-off family, she's not used to these very rustic conditions, and she's quite annoyed that she is sent there at all. So she has quite a lot of things that are kind of working against her. It's first-person perspective. I really liked Alice's character, even though there are a few instances where I feel like she behaves a little bit like a brat, but you know, that is understandable from where she comes from her experiences that she's had. She doesn't want to be there, and she does complain about it, but she still does her best, and she still tries to make the most of it, and she still tries to do what she's sent there to do, and tries to make friends with and tries to fit in with the town. So initially it seems like there's not a lot of reason for her to be there. They don't seem to need a lot of magical help. But then a adventuring group come from outside of the border, and there was a reasonably recent, probably in the last 50 years or so, war with a country that this country she's from had taken over some of their lands, and she's sort of near the borderlands, and this adventuring group comes through, and they have this massive chest of gold that they start handing out for work getting done, but it seems like there's something not quite right about the gold, and then a bunch of different things happens, and Alice ends up having to go on this journey out into the wilds, and she hires a half-orc. She doesn't know he's a half-orc. She hires a tracker, and she finds out he's a half-orc to help her to track this person down. It sort of sounds, as I'm talking about it, like I'm talking about it as a Dungeons and Dragons campaign, and it very much felt like I was reading a Dungeons and Dragons campaign, which, given that I love Dungeons and Dragons, worked really well for me. And yeah, I found it really fun and really interesting. There were definitely some cozy fantasy elements, particularly in the town, but once we got out of the town, once she had to go on her adventure, there was a lot more high stakes, and towards the end of the book there are some more reveals for the rest of the series that certainly make the stakes quite high. So I'm looking forward to reading the rest of the series. I did really enjoy Alice as a character. Being in her head, she's quite a sarcastic character, which I really enjoyed, and like I said, she's trying her best, she's trying to make the most of it, which I thought was really good, but I still really enjoyed her kind of sarcastic quips that she had to herself and that sort of thing. There is a romance in the story as well, and it is between Alice and Morania, who is a half-elf, I think, and yeah, I really enjoyed that. Alice herself is bisexual, and she makes several references to her previous, I think it's kind of more friends with benefits with friends of hers, one male and one female, and it seemed like it was a polyamorous setup between them, so that's really fun. So there's some queer rep and also polyamory rep, which I really enjoyed. It's very understated as well, which I did really enjoy as well. So it's not sort of, you know, it's not a big reveal, it's just she mentions it here and there, and then she ends up having a relationship with this half-elf woman. Also in the book there are other characters who are LGBTQIA+, so there is 2 male innkeepers who are in a relationship together, and like I said, it's very just, that's what it is, that's normal. There's no like contention about that, there's no having to come out or anything like that. It's just how people are, and I really, really enjoyed that. I thought that was fantastic. I gave it 4 stars. I kind of felt like it left on very much of a cliffhanger. I personally like to have the kind of main story of a particular book wrapped up, even though there potentially is more ongoing, whereas this left it at very much a cliffhanger, which isn't my favourite thing for that type of book. Other situations, like I said, I don't mind a bit of ambiguity, but I guess in that type of book. And the other thing was, to begin with, again, I found the writing style a little bit not quite to my taste. I did get used to it, and I did start to really enjoy it, and yeah, really enjoy the characters and really enjoy the story. But at the very beginning, I felt like this is so nitpicky, but I felt like the sentences were too long with too many clauses, and I wanted there to be not so much less description. It wasn't that the world building was too big or too saturated. It was just that the sentence structure, I felt, needed to be a little bit more, I mean, just a little bit better edited, I guess. But again, that is more personal preference than anything else. But yeah, that was a book that I also really enjoyed and read in April. And the final book that I read in April was The Skylarks Secret by Fiona Valpy. This was one of my self-destruct books, actually from last year, but I was really keen on it, and so I gave myself until June to read this one as well, and I'm really, really glad I did. I loved this book. On Core Pile, I gave this an 8.71, which works out at 4.5 stars. It's definitely my favourite book of the month, and even though it didn't get the full 5 stars, I do think it was absolutely fantastic. It made me cry, which books don't often do, to be honest. I'm not going to tell you why. There were a couple of incidences that made me cry, and I just found it really, really moving. So this is a book that is historical fiction, and it follows 2 different timelines. One is the Second World War, and one is the late 1970s, 1978. We are following Lexi, and we're following her mother. So Lexi is the character in 1978. In 1978, she moves back to Scotland into the small cottage that was her family's cottage. Unfortunately, all of her family are deceased. Her mother died, I think, probably a year or so before, maybe 6 months before the story opens. Yeah, she moves back to Scotland. She moves back because she has a toddler, but also because her career is pretty much done. So she was a singer and actress on stage in the London West End, had to stop singing, and so she's moved back because essentially her career is not going well, having a baby in London is not going well, and so she decides that it's best to go back home. But like I said, unfortunately her family are no longer there, but she does have friends and other people that her mother knew who can help her and support her. And then the other character that we follow is Flora, who is Lexi's mother, and this is the story of a relationship between Flora and Lexi's father. Lexi doesn't know much about her father. Her mother refused to talk about him when she was younger. She knows that her father died before she was born, but she doesn't know really that, and she knows who the father was, but she doesn't know much about him. So it's a story of her mother and her relationship with Lexi's father, and what the difficulties for their relationship was, and then how she fell pregnant, and then what happened to the father before the baby was born, before Lexi was born. So it basically follows 2 young women, and it's about family secrets. It's about interpersonal relationships between people and how they can be good or bad, but it's also about war and the effects that war has. So this is in the Scottish Highlands, but it's in, I don't know how based in historical fact it is, but it's in Loch Ewe is the setting, and in the book anyway, this was a place that ended up being a sort of base for the naval missions to Russia to keep the Russian army supplied. And yeah, it was just really well written. The story was just so beautifully done. The writing style was fantastic. Thoroughly enjoyed it, and yeah, like I said, it made me cry. It made me have lots of feels, and I just thought it was absolutely beautiful. So yeah, that was that one, Skylarks Secret, and we are at the end of the video. Comment any thoughts that you have on any of the books that I've read. What did you read in the month of April? What did you enjoy? What did you not enjoy? Let me know all of that in the description below. Have you read any of the books that I've read in April yourself? Do either of those arcs, Cuckoo in the Nest or The Warden, sound interesting? Do you think you might go and purchase copies or find them from the library or what have you? Let me know all of that in the comments below. If you'd like to leave me a comment but you don't know what, then leave me a bird emoji, because we had the Skylarks Secret was my favourite book of the month. All of my social media details are listed in the description below, so if you'd like to go and follow me on any of those other platforms, please feel free to do so. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, I would absolutely love it if you would subscribe to my channel and give this video a thumbs up. And yeah, like I said, thank you so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you next time.